Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, my beloved sisters in Islam. Today I want to remind you of something powerful, and I say it with love. Stop being a soft woman in the wrong way. Islam does not call you to be walked over, used, or broken by this world. No, my sister. Islam calls you to be dignified, resilient, and firm. Let me tell you, softness of the heart is beautiful, but being soft in your principles, soft in your self-worth, and soft in the face of harm, that is not Islam. That is not what our mother Khadija Ra taught us. That is not how Aisha Ra lived. That is not what Fatima Ra showed. They were loving, yes, but they were also sharp, wise, and confident. They could not be manipulated, not even by the strongest men. Why? Because they were anchored in their faith, in their purpose, in their identity as believing women. My sister, strength is not arrogance. Strength is knowing when to walk away from what displeases Allah. How many times have you stayed silent when wrong was being done, thinking that patience means tolerating injustice? Wallahi, true patience is standing firm while obeying Allah. It's not hiding your voice when truth needs to be spoken. It's not ignoring disrespect because you fear rejection. That is not patience, that is fear. The Prophet Muhammad said, "The strong is not the one who can wrestle, but the one who controls himself in anger." Bukhari and Muslim. So control your emotions, yes, but don't suppress your worth. Don't become someone who needs constant praise to feel alive. Don't be so soft that you melt under pressure from others who don't even fear Allah. You don't need to fight like the world fights, but you do need to stand like the believing women stood, with dignity, with boundaries, with purpose. Sisters, listen carefully. The more you place your value in what people say, the softer you become in the wrong ways. But the more you place your worth in what Allah thinks of you, the stronger and more radiant you become. In this world, people will test you. Some will try to silence you. Some will try to use you. But if your connection with Allah is strong, no one can break you. So today I remind you, stop being soft in your deen. Stop being soft in your standards. Stop being soft when Allah created you to be strong. May Allah grant you strength like Maryam Az, wisdom like Aisha Ra, and courage like Khawla bint al-Azwar Ra. Ameen. Islam honors strength in women, not just physical or worldly strength, but inner, spiritual, and emotional resilience. Often when people talk about women in religion, they assume that Islam calls women to be quiet, submissive, and passive. But that is a misunderstanding. Islam dignifies the woman who knows her worth, who stands for truth, who does not compromise her principles, and who does not allow herself to be used, manipulated, or broken down by society. The idea that a righteous Muslim woman is someone who always agrees, who never speaks up, and who sacrifices her dignity for the sake of others, that is not Islamic, that is cultural, and there's a big difference. When we look at the women honored by Allah in the Quran and in the life of the Prophet Muhammad, we see examples of incredible strength. Khadija Ra, the first believer in Islam, was not soft in the wrong way. She was a successful businesswoman, independent, decisive, and respected. She supported the Prophet not just with her wealth, but with her wisdom. She didn't hesitate to reassure him when he came down from the cave after the first revelation, terrified and unsure. She said with clarity, "Allah will never disgrace you." That was strength. That was confidence rooted in faith. Take Aisha Ra. Her knowledge shaped the Ummah. She narrated thousands of hadith, corrected companions when they made mistakes, and was consulted on major matters of religion. Would you call that soft? No, that was firmness and clarity in religion. Her mind was sharp, her tongue was confident, but always grounded in faith. Islam never said women should be weak. In fact, the believing woman is called a fortress of honor and integrity, and a fortress is not soft. A fortress does not collapse under pressure. A fortress protects. Likewise, Allah expects believing women to protect their dignity, their faith, and their values, even when the world pushes against them. Unfortunately, some sisters today are taught from a young age that being a good Muslim woman means pleasing everyone, no matter how she feels. She's told to say yes, to stay silent, to accept everything. But this kind of softness becomes dangerous. It leads to emotional manipulation, spiritual burnout, and even abusive relationships. Islam teaches balance. Be gentle, yes. Be kind, yes. But not at the cost of your boundaries and your self-worth. You're not here to be a people pleaser. You're here to be a servant of Allah. That means you must be strong. The Prophet said, "The strong believer is more beloved to Allah than the weak believer, although both are good." Muslim, that strength includes women. It includes the strength to say no when something is wrong, the strength to walk away from toxic people, the strength to raise your children on truth, the strength to lower your gaze in a world that's constantly calling you to compromise. That strength is not arrogance, it is not rebellion, it is obedience to Allah with dignity. Don't let anyone convince you that Islam wants you to be fragile. Islam wants you to be firm. A woman who can face the storm of this dunya with her head held high and her heart connected to her Creator. That's the kind of woman Allah loves. Think of Maryam as she faced the worst accusations, stood alone during childbirth, and didn't have a husband to protect her. But she had Allah, and He honored her above the women of the world. Why? Because she had taqwa, because she trusted Allah and stayed firm. My dear sister, don't mistake emotional softness for faith. It's good to be kind, it's good to have mercy. But when you find yourself compromising your deen, losing your voice, or accepting disrespect in the name of being soft, that's a problem. Islam gave you rights. Islam gave you a voice. Islam gave you the permission to protect yourself, to demand respect, and to hold firm to your values, even if people dislike it. The world needs more women who are soft-hearted but strong-willed, who can cry in tahajjud but speak with power in public, who are gentle with the weak but unshaken by criticism, who love for the sake of Allah and walk away for the sake of Allah. That balance of mercy and might is the hallmark of a true Muslim woman. So the next time someone tells you that being quiet, submissive, and easily controlled makes you righteous, remind yourself Allah honors strength, not stubbornness, not ego, but spiritual strength, and that strength begins when you fear no one but Him. Emotional intelligence is one of the greatest strengths a woman can have, not a weakness as many people mistakenly believe. In Islam, emotions are not something to suppress or be ashamed of. Rather, they are a part of our human nature, a sign of our compassion, and a means by which we connect to others and understand ourselves. However, emotional intelligence means learning how to manage those emotions, not be ruled by them. A woman who has emotional depth but lacks control becomes vulnerable, not just to others but to her own insecurities and fears. Islam doesn't call on women to erase their emotions but to channel them in ways that elevate them. The Prophet Muhammad was the most emotionally intelligent of all human beings. He cried, he felt pain, he showed affection, and he expressed grief. But he was never led by emotion in a way that made him unjust, irrational, or impulsive. He was balanced. And that is the goal for every believer, to attain emotional maturity that reflects both softness of heart and firmness of principle. This applies to women especially, because in many cultures women are conditioned to believe that their emotional side is either a weakness or a license to lose control. Islam teaches neither. Islam teaches that emotions are a trust, and you are accountable for how you act on them. For a woman to grow spiritually, she must first develop a strong connection with her own self. She must recognize her emotional triggers, the patterns that cause her to fall into despair, to react impulsively, or to seek approval where she shouldn't. Emotional intelligence means being able to feel sadness without becoming bitter, to feel love without becoming dependent, to feel anger without becoming destructive. And this strength is something the Prophet taught when he said, "The strong one is not he who defeats others in wrestling, but the one who controls himself when angry." Bukhari and Muslim. That hadith isn't just for men, it's for you too, my sister. Today, many women confuse kindness with allowing people to cross their boundaries. They confuse being emotional with being reactive. But emotional maturity means understanding the time and place for everything. There are times to cry, and there are times to speak. There are times to be patient, and there are times to draw the line. A woman who is emotionally intelligent doesn't allow herself to be constantly swayed by people's opinions or manipulated by temporary emotions. Instead, she learns to regulate her heart by anchoring it to Allah. Because when your heart is connected to the Creator, you're not easily disturbed by the creation. When a woman lacks emotional intelligence, she often becomes a victim of her own feelings. She may stay in relationships that damage her soul because she doesn't want to upset others. She may tolerate disrespect to avoid confrontation. She may carry guilt that doesn't belong to her and blame herself for things she cannot control. Islam doesn't ask this of you. Islam calls you to self-awareness and personal strength. The Prophet said, "Whoever knows himself knows his Lord." Part of knowing yourself is being honest about your emotions, not running from them, but understanding them and using them to become closer to Allah. Emotional intelligence also means having the wisdom to respond, not react. When someone insults you, you don't need to prove your worth to them. You prove your worth by remaining composed, dignified, and trusting that Allah will handle what you cannot. A woman who is quick to react to every word, every criticism, every rejection, becomes exhausted and confused. But a woman who trains her soul to stay calm, to seek Allah first before responding, becomes powerful in her silence and wise in her speech. This kind of strength doesn't come from books alone. It comes from life, from prayer, from tears shed in the middle of the night, and from a conscious effort to please Allah more than people. Emotional intelligence is not about hiding pain. It's about learning to carry that pain with grace, to transform wounds into wisdom, and to use every hardship as a means of elevation. In a world that often praises emotional numbness or impulsive outbursts, Islam teaches something more noble: balance. You are allowed to feel deeply. You are allowed to cry. You are allowed to be affected by life. But you are not meant to drown in those feelings. You are meant to rise above them, grow from them, and let them bring you closer to your Lord. So, my dear sister, do not let anyone convince you that your emotional side makes you weak. What makes you weak is being ruled by emotions you haven't understood. What makes you strong is the ability to feel with depth but respond with wisdom. That is emotional intelligence. And that, in the sight of Allah, is real strength. Many women today confuse sabr, patience, with staying silent in the face of injustice. They believe that tolerating harmful behavior, enduring toxic environments, and never speaking up for themselves is part of being a good Muslim woman. But that's not sabr. That's not what Islam teaches. True patience is not passive. It is not weak. It is not silent when silence allows harm to continue. In Islam, sabr is strength. It is the ability to endure with dignity, to respond to hardship with action rooted in faith, and to stand firm in truth even when it's difficult. There is no virtue in allowing yourself to be mistreated in the name of patience. Allah does not call upon His believing servants to be doormats. He commands them to stand for justice, even if it is against themselves or their loved ones. In Surah An-Nisa, Allah says, "Sent, O you who have believed, be persistently standing firm in justice, witnesses for Allah, even if it be against yourselves or parents or relatives." Quran 4:13-5. This verse applies to everyone, men and women. Islam does not differentiate between the moral responsibility of each believer when it comes to standing for what is right. So why are so many women taught that they must tolerate oppression for the sake of peace? That is not Islam. That is a misunderstanding of what sabr truly means. There is a reason why Islam forbids zulm, injustice in all its forms. Whether it is done by a ruler, a spouse, a parent, or a friend, zulm is something Allah Himself has declared forbidden. The Prophet said in a hadith Qudsi, "O my servants, I have forbidden injustice for myself and have made it forbidden among you, so do not oppress one another." Muslim. If Allah forbade injustice even upon Himself, how can we think that enduring injustice is somehow noble? Yes, there are times when we are tested, times when patience is necessary. But patience is not the same as silence. For example, when you are being wronged and you continue to make dua, take action and protect your dignity, that is sabr. But when you allow someone to keep harming you, disrespecting you, and you do nothing to stop it, thinking that this is your religious duty, that is not sabr, that is self-neglect. Islam never encourages you to neglect yourself. The Prophet said, there should be neither harming nor reciprocating harm. Ibn Majah. This hadith is a foundational principle in Islamic ethics. It tells us that both harming others and allowing harm to continue are against the spirit of Islam. So if you are in a situation where you are constantly being mistreated, whether emotionally, physically, or verbally, and you remain in that situation believing it is part of your faith to do so, you need to re-evaluate. Islam commands you to protect your dignity and your heart. Look at how the Prophet treated women. He never allowed their voices to be silenced. Women came to him with their complaints, their questions, and their concerns. And he listened. He didn't tell them, "Be patient and remain silent." He addressed their pain. When one woman came to complain about her husband's harsh behavior in Surah Al-Mujadilah, Allah revealed verses acknowledging her pain and injustice. Indeed, Allah has heard the statement of the woman who argues with you, O Muhammad, concerning her husband. Quran 58:1. If Allah heard her voice from above the heavens, how can we tell women today to stay silent? We must understand that sabr is an active process. It involves spiritual effort, emotional control, and wise action. It doesn't mean allowing someone to abuse your kindness or take advantage of your loyalty. If someone is harming you, you have every right, according to the Sharia, to defend yourself, to speak out, and to seek change. That does not make you rebellious. That makes you strong. That makes you a believer who understands the value Allah has given her. When a woman stops confusing silence with piety, she begins to live Islam the way it was meant to be lived, with confidence, with strength, and with balance. You can be a woman of sabr and still walk away from what breaks you. You can be patient and still protect your peace. Islam is not a religion that calls you to suffer quietly. It calls you to stand with dignity, to speak with wisdom, and to act with courage. So, dear sister, do not think your worth is in how much pain you can endure. Your worth is in how much faith you carry through that pain and how you use that faith to rise, protect yourself, and do what pleases Allah. True sabr is standing firm, not lying down. When we look into the lives of the greatest women in Islamic history, we do not find fragile, passive, or overly dependent personalities. What we see are examples of strength, wisdom, and courage. Women who were bold in their decisions, firm in their faith, and impactful in their communities. Islam has never asked women to be silent shadows in the background. On the contrary, it gave them a voice, rights, and roles of influence. The idea that a woman must be soft to the point of silence, or gentle to the point of being ignored, is not only un-Islamic, it is unjust. Consider Khadija bint Khuwaylid Ra, the first wife of the Prophet Muhammad. She was not just a wife, she was a powerful, wealthy businesswoman, known for her intelligence and integrity. She was so respected in Mecca that men would seek her out to do business with her. She proposed marriage to the Prophet based on his character, not societal expectations. When he received the first revelation and was shaken to his core, it was Khadija who comforted him, reminded him of his worth, and reassured him that Allah would never abandon someone like him. That's not the reaction of a soft, uncertain woman. That is the voice of strength, wisdom, and emotional stability. Then there is Aisha bint Abu Bakr Ra, the wife of the Prophet, one of the greatest scholars in our history. She narrated over 2,000 hadiths. She corrected the companions when they misunderstood the teachings of the Prophet. She was consulted in matters of fiqh, and many male companions would come to her for answers. Would we dare call her soft in the modern sense? She was sharp, expressive, educated, and deeply involved in the preservation of Islam. She had confidence in herself, because her knowledge and connection with Allah gave her inner strength. Her example shows us that being a righteous Muslim woman includes speaking up, asking questions, correcting misunderstandings, and standing on firm ground when you know the truth. Another powerful figure is Salama Ra, another wife of the Prophet. She was known for her intelligence and advice. During the Treaty of Hudaybiyah, when the Prophet was worried that his companions would not carry out a difficult command, it was Salama who gave the wise suggestion that solved the situation. The Prophet listened to her, followed her advice, and peace was restored among the people. What does this show us? That women's wisdom is not just tolerated in Islam, it is honored. Their contributions are not hidden, they are part of our legacy. Then we have Nusayba bint Ka'ab Ra, a warrior who fought in the Battle of Uhud alongside the Prophet. She took up a sword and shield, defended the Prophet when many had fled, and sustained multiple wounds in doing so. She was praised by the Prophet for her bravery. If Islam wanted women to be soft in the way that makes them incapable of strength, how do we explain the presence of a woman like Nusayba, whose actions were honored, not condemned? These examples are not exceptions. They are the standard set by Islam for women who live with purpose. They were not rude, arrogant, or reckless, but they were not weak, overly accommodating, or silent in the face of truth either. They balanced femininity with firmness, compassion with courage, and humility with self-worth. The mistake we make today is in assuming that strength is only for men, but strength has many forms. For a woman, it might be in raising a righteous child despite hardship, in speaking up against injustice, in walking away from a relationship that harms her faith, or in educating herself to serve her community. Strength is not loudness, it's not rebellion. It's the quiet determination to please Allah no matter what others expect. Islam didn't limit a woman's role to the kitchen or the house. It gave her the space to be a scholar, a businesswoman, a fighter, a leader, as long as she remains within the boundaries of modesty and sincerity. The problem today is that some women, have been conditioned to believe their strength is a threat rather than a gift. But when used for good, a woman's strength becomes a light for herself and for those around her. So if you are a woman who wants to follow the path of the righteous, don't limit yourself to someone else's narrow definition of softness. Embrace the examples that Allah gave us. Be like Khadija in your wisdom, Aisha in your intellect, Salama in your advice, and Nusayba in your courage. This is what it means to be a strong Muslim woman in the eyes of Islam, not in rebellion, but in balance, principle, and unwavering faith. A soft heart is one of the most beautiful qualities a person can have, especially in a world that often praises hardness, ego, and detachment. But being soft-hearted should not be confused with being emotionally weak, easily manipulated, or dependent on the approval of others. In Islam, your strength begins when your heart is connected to Allah and your self-worth is rooted in His guidance, not in the praise, validation, or attention of people. Too many women today seek constant affirmation from others, whether it be through relationships, social media, friendships, or even family, and in doing so, they weaken the very foundation of their dignity. Islam teaches that your value is not measured by how many people like you, choose you, or praise you. Your value is given by Allah. He created you with honor, He covered you with modesty, He elevated you with iman. The more you understand your worth in His sight, the less you chase validation from creation. A woman who knows her worth in the eyes of Allah is not desperate for attention. She is content even when the world ignores her. She is strong even when others try to belittle her. She is focused on pleasing the one who created her, not impressing those who may turn against her tomorrow. When you constantly look to others to tell you who you are, whether you're beautiful, worthy, loved, you are giving them power over your heart. And the truth is, people are unstable. One day they love you, the next day they leave you. One day they praise you, the next day they forget you. That is the nature of dunya. If your heart is tied to them, you will rise and fall with their opinions. But if your heart is tied to Allah, you will remain steady, firm in your values, secure in your identity, and at peace regardless of how others treat you. This is not to say that wanting love or appreciation is wrong. It's natural. Allah created us with a need for connection. But when that need becomes your main source of self-worth, it leads to emotional instability. You begin to compromise your principles to be accepted. You stay in harmful situations because you fear being alone. You lower your standards because you think no one else will choose you. And slowly you lose parts of yourself. That's not what Islam wants for you. Islam wants you to build your foundation on La ilaha illallah, on knowing that no one and nothing can complete you except your Creator. This is why the Quran constantly reminds us to return to Allah. He is Anan al-Ghani, the free of need, and He wants you to be free of need from others when it comes to your dignity. He is Anan Ladud, the most loving, and He can fill your heart with love in ways no human ever can. He is Anan Latif Fanat, the most subtle, and He understands the pain you carry that no one else sees. When you build your self-worth on your relationship with Him, your heart becomes protected from the emotional roller coaster of seeking constant approval. A woman who relies too much on others for emotional fulfillment becomes vulnerable to disappointment, heartbreak, and spiritual emptiness. But a woman who builds her inner world through prayer, reflection, and obedience to Allah gains a sense of stability that no one can take from her. She is the one who can be rejected and still smile. She can be misunderstood and still speak the truth. She can be alone and still feel loved, because her heart is filled by the one who never abandons her. Don't let society convince you that your value comes from how many people are drawn to you. Don't let your emotions be controlled by likes, messages, or compliments. You are more than someone's attention. You are more than someone's approval. You are a servant of the Most Merciful, and He has given you a role, a purpose, and a place that no one else can fill. Strength is not in shutting off your emotions, nor in becoming cold and indifferent. True strength is being soft-hearted, but not needy. It's being emotionally aware, but spiritually anchored. This world will try to define you in 1,000 different ways, but the only definition that matters is the one Allah gives you. And He says in the Quran, indeed the most noble of you in the sight of Allah is the one with the most taqwa. Quran 4:9-13. Taqwa, God consciousness, is what makes you valuable. Not your beauty, not your popularity, not your relationship status. So focus on building your heart from the inside. Cleanse it with dhikr. Strengthen it with dua. nourish it with Quran, and protect it with tawakkul. When your heart belongs to Allah, you no longer fear losing people, because you know the one who never leaves is enough. That is the kind of strength Islam wants for you, not hardness, not ego, but a soft heart protected by a strong soul.